Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA strategy show, the one where we give you all the guaranteed winners. Sponsored today by No House Advantage. Got a nice little 7-game slate for you guys. Joined today by Adam ShipMyMoney Scherer. Adam, how you doing, man?
Doing good. Always enjoy Saturdays. Wake up, talk about basketball, get some MMA, and then nice 7-game slate tonight.
Definitely. This one should be good. Now let's talk a little bit about last night's slate because it's still fresh in our minds. So we were all coming down to the last game, and if you guys remember, we're the only show in the industry that recommended Kevin Porter Jr. and he really came through. So he was like everyone had him, but he delivered. So
It still feels good.
It does, yeah. It's like the first time we got to roster him since the last time, and what else did you take away from yesterday's slate? I know there was an Embiid injury that kind of frustrated everyone.
Yeah, the Embiid injury sucked. Obviously I've been playing a lot of cash lately, so it wasn't a huge deal for me because pretty much everybody had him, so it didn't matter. But yeah, he was playing well. Like there's nothing obviously negative to take away there other than there was an injury and it sucks. Fortunate, I think, that he's only going to be out 2 to 3 weeks. It looked really bad. I'm not sure if you saw it. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I think that there was nothing that I really noticed that stood out too much. It was another night where I know you and I talked about it yesterday, but playing multiple sites, it kind of just gives you like a higher floor. I got killed on FanDuel, but did really well on DraftKings, so still came out ahead just because, you're able to roster different players. So I think that's one thing that I've been doing more lately, and I know you recommend also.
Yeah, definitely. Like the lineup construction is a lot different because of the floor price. So plus guys like KJ Martin in your lineups, although he did come through pretty big yesterday as well.
Yeah.
But
Jayshawn Tate, on the other hand, did not.
yeah, man, I was about to buy his Top Shot, but then I got like frozen because the marketplace shut down. Anyway, guys, before we get into today's slate, if you can hit that thumbs up button, we appreciate that positive feedback. Also, if they got contests, we got content. So hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subbed to the channel. Got a lot of great DFS shows. Today we're sponsored by No House Advantage. They're a site where you can bet props except in DFS style contests. So it's open in a lot of states that you might not be able to bet props normally. Plus, you're playing against other people instead of the house, so it's a lot easier to win. You can use the promo code Awesemo on nohouseadvantage.com to get a first match bonus up to $20. So make sure to check out No House Advantage. All right, tonight we got our first game, a pretty good one, Toronto at Charlotte. Now, Toronto has been hit with a little bit of a COVID bug, I think, where they have Van Vliet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam out for this one. So what we saw last game is Kyle Lowry started a little slow, but he turned it up to make value. And then Norman Powell had a big game. His price tag has been climbing pretty steadily. And then the supporting cast in Toronto continues to be hard to kind of predict what's going to happen. So how are you feeling about Toronto overall tonight?
Yes, I mean, I think Lowry still, is going to get the bulk of the workload, as you would expect. He's still he's expensive, but still reasonably priced considering that he's going to be most of the offense. As far as the rest of the pieces go, Powell did play another 39 minutes. You're probably going to get 36 plus from him again. His usage does go up. He is getting for like the few minutes that Lowry's not on the floor, Powell normally is. So I think that benefits him as well. Still a pretty expensive price tag for him though. I think that one of the interesting things, and you and I had talked about it before their last game, but once again, we got 30 minutes from Aaron Baines. We got 30 minutes from Chris Boucher. So that's about 12 minutes that those guys played together. And that's about 12 minutes those guys played together. And so it makes, both of them, I think, more appealing options than they typically are.
Yeah, I forgot about how Baines had a huge game last time. His price tag. I was thinking that part of the reason was because of this matchup versus Atlanta, where they have two pretty traditional bigs. Charlotte, I guess it's the same situation because they're running out PJ Washington and Cody Zeller. So they do have two like standard bigs at the forward position. Does the matchup make you think any differently about the Baines and Boucher plays?
I don't think it's quite as like perfect as the last two were, but I still think it's good enough. Um, you're getting Zeller. Biombo played 14 minutes last game too, so you're probably getting around 40 minutes of Zeller and Biombo, which means that most of PJ Washington's minutes are coming at the four. I think it should be pretty easy for Boucher to play alongside Baines for enough minutes to be good for DFS.
Awesome. That's good to hear because Boucher is one of my favorite fantasy plays just because, man, that guy, he has extreme variance, which makes him ideal to target in GPPs because his ceiling is a little bit higher than his median projection would indicate. So a little bit low owned on most slates. Now, Kyle Lowry himself, 8,700 on DraftKings, 8,400 on FanDuel. Price tag's going up, but it sounded like you're still feeling him maybe because he's got such a big role with these guys out.
Yeah, he's around a 1.15 to 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy without Van Vliet and Siakam on the floor. He plays huge minutes. So I think his price point is at, like, I think he's reached a point where you're not just blindly plugging him into your lineup because those guys are out. But I still think he's a very good play. And, it kind of will come down to roster construction, what news we get throughout the day. But I do think that Lowry at that price point is still a pretty good option.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's pretty appealing. Anytime you can get a side that's more than 5x, that's pretty good. And then Norman Powell, I'd say, is a decent play, but the guy that's really jumping out on the value is DeAndre Bembry. We've seen even when one of the Raptors guys is out, he has a potential to play big minutes. He played monster minutes last game, 37. So he's 3,800 on DraftKings, 4,100 on FanDuel. Not a guy that does a ton while he's out on the court, but those minutes make him an appealing option. Do you think Bembry is worth going back to tonight?
Yeah, the big thing for me is just how cheap his salary still is because, 2 games ago, you only got like 19 or 20 minutes from him. There's still a path for him to not play a ton of minutes, but he's going to at least get that opportunity. And the other thing that I like about Toronto's rotation in these last couple of games is that he's been playing whenever Lowry's not on the floor, like he's been subbing in for Lowry. So that puts the ball in Bembry's hands a little bit more. It makes him a little bit more valuable from a DFS standpoint. It would be one thing if the site said, he played 38 minutes last game, let's make him 5K. Then you're taking on a lot of risk because of that minutes volatility. But since he's still really, really cheap, it's mostly upside at that price point.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he looks like one of the top value options so far. And then the other Raptors are a little bit tougher to peg. Stanley Johnson played pretty good minutes in the last game, but he's a mercurial player, I'd say, where like he'll get 28 minutes one game and like 12 the next. So he's a little bit tough to pin down. Then Terrence Davis is another guy who pretty much is exactly the same, except last game he didn't get the minutes and Johnson did. So what are you expecting to happen today?
Yeah, I kind of like Stanley Johnson here. Like, he's not a great fantasy producer, but he did play 35 or 36 minutes 2 games ago. And then last game he played 27, but he did also deal with a little bit of foul trouble in the first half. He missed about 4 minutes at the end of that half, it looks like. Boucher actually subbed in and picked up some of those minutes, but he picked up like 3 fouls in the second quarter. So, if you're getting around 30 minutes from him, it's not someone that you expect to break the slate, but he is still a little cheap. Terrence Davis in tournaments, if you're playing a lot of lineups, I think is kind of interesting because he only played about 10 minutes last game. He didn't play at all in the second half, but 2 games ago, he played 32 minutes in the game where Bembry played 20. So he works, I think, as a leverage play with Bembry where like a lot of people are going to play Bembry and for good reason. But if Bembry plays fewer minutes than people are projecting, there's a very good chance that Terrence Davis plays more minutes than people are projecting.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened. Was Terrence Davis questionable going into the last game? Because I remember there was something with him, right?
No, he was. He was questionable, I think.
All right. So yeah, in the last game he was questionable with an ankle, and he didn't play the second half. Today, we don't have any injury designation, so there is a chance that maybe he rejoins the starting lineup, like he was 2 games ago. If he does, that would mean I'd be a lot more likely to target him. On the Charlotte side, we had Zeller come back. Last game, he played pretty good minutes, closed the game out. Besides that, we had Devontae Graham coming off the bench with a minutes limit. He didn't really play a ton. And then Ball stayed in the starting lineup. So pretty much happened like we were expecting. with one more game back with Zeller and Graham, are you expecting anything different?
No, I mean, I think you'll probably get more than 18 minutes for Graham, but I don't think that really is going to have too big of an impact on DFS. Like, I still think LaMelo Ball, he only played about 30 minutes in that game, but typically I think you're going to get a little bit more run from Ball. Rozier played 31 minutes, which is about what I expect. I think that you'll just kind of see Cody Martin probably leave the rotation eventually. Malik Monk maybe play a little bit fewer minutes. You could also see Bismack Biyombo play a little bit less as they go with more 3-guard lineups. But overall, I kind of expect that to be the case going forward. What we saw last game, just with minor fluctuations that don't have too much of an impact on DFS.
Yeah, agreed. So with the return of some of these guys, it's making the value on the team a little bit weaker than average. And Toronto, with their depleted squad, appears to be a good matchup, but none of these guys are popping as far as value for me. So what do you make of the Charlotte guys for DFS?
Yeah, I think it's just really difficult to get to most of their price points. The one guy that does look like he has some value, I think, is Cody Zeller, who did play about 26 minutes last game. And he was someone that you and I had talked about, like he prior to the games that he missed, his playing time had been reduced and it made it really difficult to trust him. I still think it's kind of tough to trust those minutes, but overall this year in his starts, he's averaged about 26 minutes per game. That's what he played in the last game. And he's been a fantasy point per minute guy. So, at his price point, I do think that there is some upside. It's just still a pretty risky option since there's a lot of ways that he could play fewer minutes.
Nice. I got see Theodore in the chat. He's saying Bogdanovich revenge narrative tonight. I like that. I got another revenge game coming up, so keep on the lookout for that. All right, but one more thing about this Toronto-Charlotte game. I'm looking at our preliminary ownership projections. Top 3 owned guys of the slate: Bembry at 38% on DraftKings, Lowry at 30%, and Norman Powell at 24%. So all 3 of the top 3 are coming from Toronto. Does that move the needle at all for you?
A little bit, just because, Bembry is cheap enough. I don't really care. I know it's something that a lot of us talk about. Like, it's just harder to find similar plays at cheap price points than it is at more expensive ones. I think Powell is fine. I think that Lowry's a good play. But if they do end up being like 2 of the 3 highest owned guys on the slate, there's going to be pivots that you can make that give you a similar range of outcomes, even if their average projection is a little lower. So definitely something that I think is worth paying attention to as the day goes on.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think Lowry and Powell are so good that they're like must plays. So I think I'm taking a look at the Boom Bust tool. We give our projections for the optimal lineup percentage. I have Lowry at 29.6% ownership and a 22% chance of being in the optimal lineup. And Bembry, 38% and 26%. So those are potential pivot points tonight. So be careful about getting too chalky if you're having a lot of these Toronto guys. All right, next game, we got Detroit at Brooklyn. So Detroit, they made a huge move yesterday. They traded ShipMyMoney for Hamidou Diallo and a second round. They gave away a second round pick in the deal as well. So that's not going to make an impact today, except that Svi obviously is not playing. Also, we got the news since the last game that Dennis Smith Jr. is on the IR for the time being, indefinitely for COVID. So the only difference for Dennis Smith, I would expect Saban Lee to take those minutes at backup point guard. But with ShipMyMoney, he started the last game. So what are you expecting to happen with Detroit's rotation?
I'm expecting Wayne Ellington to go back into the starting lineup. He had been starting until recently when Svi replaced him in the starting lineup. So I think he goes back to the starting lineup. You probably get 28, 30 minutes from him. Not the best DFS player, but I think he'll pick up some minutes. I think you'll also just end up seeing DeLon Wright play a little bit more. I think you'll see Josh Jackson play a little bit more. He only played about 20 minutes last game to just kind of soak up those minutes that you're losing from Svi. And I agree with you. I think Saban Lee replaces Dennis Smith Jr.
Nice. So if I give DeLon Wright 30 minutes, he looks like a pretty appealing guy for DFS. He's 5,500 on DraftKings and 6,100 on FanDuel. And we did see him play pretty big minutes over a stretch of games where they relied on point guards. So do you think he's a good play tonight?
Yeah, I think he's risky because Detroit is one of these teams. Like, one thing just in general that we're going to need to pay attention to, basically from this point forward, and probably, already have been, is teams that are just playing for nothing and, keeping their motivations in mind. Detroit's one of these teams where they can do whatever they want over the course of a game with minutes because they couldn't care less about winning. So I think it just makes guys a little bit riskier from this team, but they're still, very clearly a path to big minutes for DeLon Wright. Like you said, he was playing big minutes up until recently. So, and he's been productive. You take Blake Griffin out, you take Derrick Rose off the team. There's plenty of opportunities there for him. So I do think that he's a good play. There's just risk because basically he's on the Pistons.
Definitely. Yeah. They have been pretty consistent with the minutes, but you're right. I mean, with a team that's not really motivated to win, it's tough to really have a ton of confidence, especially since they're resting their best player, who's like not even that old, like every other game, it seems like. So that's kind of wild. But with the rest of the Pistons, assuming nothing changes, I think Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee are fair plays, but nothing that stands out a ton. And then maybe Isaiah Stewart as a really cheap contrarian option. Are you seeing anything here?
Yeah, I'm with you there. Plumlee's definitely one of the guys that you and I had talked about that we'll kind of just have to keep an eye on as the season goes along. He only played 25 minutes last game, but he did get in some foul trouble early in the third quarter. So that's why you saw Isaiah Stewart play a little bit more, Plumlee play a little bit less. For now, I still feel pretty good expecting like 30 minutes from Plumlee, 18 from Stewart. And Plumlee has been very productive when he's played without Rose or Griffin on the floor this year. So, still risky and still, at a premium position. But I think that Plumlee gives you a pretty nice ceiling, and then Jeremy Grant has been the best fantasy producer on the team all season long.
Nice. On the Brooklyn side, we have Blake Griffin out for this one, which is sad because we could have seen that revenge game. And then Kevin Durant is out as well. I mean, he's been out for a while, but he's not back today. So, the main guys on Brooklyn are Kyrie and Harden. How are you feeling about them tonight?
Still love Harden. Kyrie is, a good play as well, but Harden's just been so involved, basically since Kyrie came out and said, basically Harden's the point guard and I'm going to be the two guard. You've seen Harden just doing everything for this team, rebounding really well, assist percentages through the roof, usage has gone up as he's played more games with Brooklyn. So I think Harden still looks great and, playing huge minutes as well, even in a reasonably lopsided game against Boston that ended up winning by 12 points. You still got Harden playing 37.7 minutes. He was until the end. You're getting, pretty consistently like 38 minutes from him. So he looks great. Obviously Detroit's not a very good team. Harden should be able to do whatever he wants. So I think he looks really good. I prefer him to Irving if I can find the salary.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm not really on Kyrie tonight at 9,700 on DraftKings. That's just a little bit too much, especially what you're saying about the point guard situation. That makes him not as exciting from the assist standpoint. Now, the rest of the Brooklyn team is a little bit tough to pin down exactly who could be a good play. So Bruce Brown is in a revenge matchup versus his former team, the Detroit Pistons. So I'm just looking at this price tag of 5,600 and 5K on FanDuel. Oh man, that just seems like way too much unless someone's out.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he rebounds well. He does a decent amount in the way of peripherals, but there's just so much usage that goes to James Harden and Kyrie Irving. And it's not like Brown's going to or likely to, grab 10 plus rebounds or something like that. So yeah, it's just, if you were a little bit cheaper, I think he'd be a really good play, as is not really that interested.
Same. Now, TLC is doubtful for this one. So I guess maybe you could go to some of the wings, but I don't really see anything. The other situation to pay attention to is Jeff Green came back last game, but he didn't really play at the center position. So you had Nick Claxton off the bench getting pretty good minutes. He's 3,300, but I'm just a little bit too worried to go there if Jeff Green starts getting some of those center minutes. So what do you think of their centers?
Yeah, I think DeAndre Jordan's actually kind of interesting here. For the reasons you said, he played 26 and a half minutes last game. Jeff Green, outside of a stretch at the end of the game, like they closed with Jeff Green at center. But other than that, Green wasn't really playing center. Detroit's not a very good rebounding team. They've allowed the sixth most offensive rebounds per game over the last month. That sets up pretty well for DeAndre Jordan if he's going to be able to, still get 26 to 28 minutes at a reasonable price tag.
Yeah, I think maybe some interest here, particularly on FanDuel. Guys, if you're not already a member of Awesemo.com, we have our NBA weekly package at $16.95. That will add a lot of tools to your arsenal to help you make a lot stronger lineups and win more and on the DFS contest. So we got our player projections, our ownership projections, the boom bust tool. I mean, the range of outcomes is so big in DFS today. In addition, we got the premium Slack channel and the game plan show. So those are all a lot of NBA tools that you'd have if you sign up. Also, if you want to check out all of our other content, we have a promo going on for our platinum package, which is every sport. It's 50% off the first week with the promo code Shamrock. So that's $15, a little bit cheaper than just signing up for NBA right now. So if you sign up for this platinum, we got MMA tonight, we got NASCAR tomorrow, NHL every day, college basketball and soccer projections from Matt Kajeski and Giovanni. So this is only valid through 3/17. So use that promo code Shamrock. All right, Milwaukee at Washington. So with Milwaukee, Drew Holiday came back, or he was off the minutes limit last game. He started, got back to pretty close to his normal minutes. So as a net result, expect Chris Middleton to maybe see a tiny bump down in production. But overall, I think Holiday, Middleton, they're decent plays. I mean, the guy I always look out for is Giannis. He looks like a solid value today against a really good matchup in Washington. So what are you thinking about these Brooklyn top three? Or sorry, Milwaukee.
Giannis obviously looks great. Washington, not the best defensive team, obviously. Give up a lot of points in the paint. Don't rebound well. Everything looks really, really good for Giannis. And, Washington does have enough star power that hopefully they're able to hang in the game as well, which obviously would be good for Giannis too. Middleton and Holiday, I think more just, tournament plays that they certainly have a high ceiling. They should do well in the matchup. They just don't really stand out as top options. Middleton's still priced up a little bit from when Drew was out. I do think 6,500 for Drew, assuming that he's going to get back to playing mid-30s in minutes, is pretty reasonable in this matchup. But, again, I think those two guys, not really priorities, more so just, if I land on them, I'm fine with it. Giannis, I think, looks like a pretty clear priority here.
Definitely. The value is a little tough on today's slate, but he does stand out as a really good way to spend some salary. Now, with the other Brooklyn guys, we got Portis and Lopez, who maybe look like some fringe value plays. Any interest with the rigs?
In tournaments, I think so, just because there's volatility there. Lopez, assuming this game's competitive, you're probably getting 26 to 28 minutes from Lopez in a good matchup. But what interests me is that Bobby Portis is 4,100 on DraftKings. His minutes are very inconsistent, and for the most part, he's just playing behind Brook Lopez. But this is just the kind of matchup where Bobby Portis can go absolutely nuts. Like a team that doesn't rebound well, a team that plays at a fast pace, Bobby Portis will be able to score against them. I think Portis is going to do very well on a per minute basis in this game. So it really just comes down to, how much does he end up playing? And that's where the volatility comes in. But because there's so much volatility, the price tag is lower than his ceiling suggests it should be. And his ownership will be lower because people don't trust the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes are pretty hard to trust, but we've seen, especially earlier in the season, he does have that potential to have a huge game. Last guy, Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, not anyone to write home about, but he's a little bit cheap tonight. Any interest?
If I get some, it's fine. Like kind of just the last piece in for me. A lot there will kind of depend on what value ends up opening up between now and lock, because he is inexpensive. He's going to probably play about 28 minutes, assuming the game's competitive. He's like a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy when everyone's healthy. So he kind of just grades out as like a reasonable value that is pretty unlikely to, really help you win a tournament, but also is not, the worst to play.
On the Washington side, it remains to be seen if anyone's going to sit on the back end of the back-to-back. But we did have Davis Bertans leave mid-game due to injury, so I'm kind of thinking he'll be out. I mean, it's the first game on the slate, so it doesn't really matter for strategy. But Do you think anyone is possibly going to sit? And then how would you handle the Wizards tonight?
Yeah, I'm not expecting anyone to sit, since Westbrook has played back-to-backs. Bradley Beal was questionable going into yesterday's game, but he played. So I guess, maybe he sits tonight. But like you said, we'll have that information. Right now, I'm assuming everyone's in except for Bertans since he did leave last game early. Unfortunately, because of the way that game went, we didn't really get to see what the rotation looked like without Bertans because the game was just out of hand by the time Bertans would normally come in the second half. We did get Denny Avdia playing a bunch of minutes in the second half. We also got Troy Brown subbing in the third quarter after not playing in the first half. So maybe you see more minutes go to Brown. I think it solidifies Avdia's minutes if Bertans is out as well. Potentially more minutes for Rui too. None of that stuff I think is makes anyone a top option for DFS. But because we do have limited value on the slate, taking a shot on like a $3,200 Troy Brown could make some sense if nothing else opens up, or a 4K Avdia, even though he hasn't been a very good fantasy producer this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by Troy Brown as well. If he gets those minutes with Bertans potentially out. So besides them, I mean, there's some cheap value like Lopez at 3,400 Rolo, but it's hard to get too excited. It's just like if you need a value play, and right now there aren't a lot. There could be a lot more later, so I don't want to get too deep here.
Same goes for Wagner too. Like his minutes are all over the place. He produces at a high rate. If there is no value, you can go there, but hopefully there'll be better value.
Yeah, if he's playing well, I mean he's starting, so he could get decent minutes. So like that. Westbrook and Beal, the prices seem to be kind of high for the matchup, but how do you think they stack up against the other top priced options tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I like the pricing. Like, I think the pricing on them is fine. The issue is just that right now, with the lack of value we have, it doesn't look like it's going to be a slate like last night where you can just plug in like three of the most expensive players. And I think that, I would rather, assuming I can only pay out for one or maybe two, I'd rather be getting to Harden if I can. I'd rather be getting to Giannis if I can than going to Beal and Westbrook. So I think if that's as high up as you're able to pay in a tournament lineup, it's fine. But I'd be looking to get to, I think Harden and Giannis look better at their prices than Beal and Westbrook do at theirs.
Thanks, Joe, for the super chat. He says, working on the weekend, definitely the best in the biz. I appreciate that super chat. Thank you. Sacramento and Atlanta. Sacramento is projected for 118 points tonight. I mean, that's pretty much what you expect in a nice matchup versus Atlanta. This one should be a pretty good up-tempo game. Two young teams. I mean, the guy on Sacramento that's been killing it has been Fox, and that's not anything we need to tell you guys. His price has gone up, though. He's 9,200 on DraftKings, a little bit cheaper on FanDuel at 8,700. How does he stand on tonight's slate for you?
It kind of feels similar to how I felt about Westbrook and Beal, where I think De'Aaron Fox is great if you can get there. I just don't know how easy it'll be to get him into lineups, especially because I do like the spot for Harden and Giannis so much, and I want to try and allocate money there. But you are getting huge minutes for De'Aaron Fox. Only played about 34 last game, but that was a blowout win where he lost several minutes at the end of the game. Typically in competitive games, you're getting like 37, 38 minutes from Fox, 1.2 fantasy points per minute for the year. So definitely a strong option, just a matter of how easy he'll be to prioritize on this slate, but especially if he's not going to get a lot of ownership in tournaments, he'll start to look interesting. We did get Halliburton back last game. He only played 18 minutes. So I think that he'll pick up a little bit more playing time. Maybe that takes minutes away from like Bielitsa, but overall, I think Fox is the guy that really stands out. I think Rashawn Holmes is reasonable as well, coming off a game where he played 34 minutes.
Yeah, the other starters seem to be decent plays, but nothing too exciting. So I see Bagley at 6,100. I'm a little bit worried about the minutes with Halliburton back, but he does have pretty good permanent numbers. Any interest in any of the bench guys?
I don't think so. I think it's mostly Fox, Holmes, and then if you get to a little bit of Harrison Barnes, like you assume he's going to play big minutes, but not really the most exciting option.
Agreed. On the Atlanta side, there was that report last game about Bogdanovich not having a minutes limit, Unfortunately, it didn't really matter because I guess he didn't play well enough to earn the minutes. He only played 16. But I feel like he's one of the better wings that is on the team right now with Cam Reddish and Hunter injured. So do you think there's potential there?
Yeah, I'd feel better if they took Tony Snell out of the starting lineup. The way I kind of view it is that as long as Snell is starting, there's not that many minutes available for Bogdanovich. Like him not being on a minutes limit is nice because if he's playing well, he can get into the mid 20s. But if you're allocating 24 to 26 minutes to Tony Snell and you assume, that Gallinari is playing around 26 minutes, there's only so many minutes out there for Bogdanovich to pick up. So, if they were to take Tony Snell out of the starting lineup, whether it's for Gallinari or for Bogdanovich, I'd like Bogdanovich a lot more.
Agreed. Yeah, this one will be tough because we won't get that starting lineup until right around lock, since this is a 7:30 game. But I do think Bogdanovich, if he starts, he'll be one of the better values. Although we should assume Snell will start for the time being. Now, what about the other Hawks? I mean, Trae Young is a top fantasy player, and they got some interesting bigs with Collins, Capella, and Gallo.
Yeah, I really like Young and Capella here. Young's salary on FanDuel in particular stands out at $9K. The Kings have just been one of the best matchups all year for basically anybody. They play at a fast pace. They don't play defense. So I think Trae Young looks really good, again, especially on FanDuel. And then Capella, the minutes have sort of been an issue all season long, but he has been extremely productive. He rebounds really well. The Kings have been awful defending the paint this year. I think that Capella at 7,500 on DraftKings looks like a very, very high ceiling play. And the same can be said for Collins, who his playing time has been inconsistent as well. But he is only 6,500 at power forward. So, if he's able to get to like 32 minutes, he probably has a big game here.
Awesome.
One negative for Collins, looking at their rotation from last game, is that he wasn't playing a lot of minutes without Capella. That has made a huge difference for him this year, where he produces at a much, much higher rate without Capella on the floor. So he did get some minutes without him, but we have seen since the coaching staff changed, Okongwu pretty consistently getting like 10 to 12 minutes as well.
Nice. Yeah, Okongwu is probable for this one as well, so you should play. John Collins has been mentioned as being on the trading block pretty much all year, so I'm kind of wondering if that's going to affect his playing time going up until the 25th deadline. What do you think?
It could, but I don't even know which way that would go. Like, are they going to showcase him or are they going to limit him?
That's true. I think limit him from big minutes, but I don't know. Let's go to the next game. Portland at Minnesota. With Portland, Nurkic, McCollum continue to be out. So we pretty much know what to expect here. I mean, Lillard and Cantor have been probably the more consistent fantasy options, but some decent other guys getting some good minutes. So the only thing is Lillard's price is up to 10.7K on DraftKings tonight. That's pretty much like the highest he's ever been as far as I remember. So is that a little bit too high for you to go, or are you still feeling him?
Yeah, I mean, he's still in play in tournaments just because he has such a massive ceiling, but it makes it really difficult to look at him as one of the best options because he's just so close in salary to Harden and to Giannis. So the appeal for Lillard basically just comes down to he's capable of scoring 60 like actual points, and he's going to be low owned because he's so expensive. So it's a spot where you can pay up to be contrarian, but I think, in terms of likelihood of success, he's priced too close to those other guys.
Great. Yeah. Now the matchup versus Minnesota is a positive. The one guy that's standing out to me a lot is Cantor. He's a good rebounder, and Minnesota isn't the greatest rebounding team. So I'm thinking maybe he can pick up a couple extra boards. And the price tag at 7,200 on DraftKings is fine. 6,800 on FanDuel is pretty appealing. How are you feeling about Cantor?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a spot where he can play a few extra minutes as well with, Karl Anthony Towns being the opposing center. It looks like a good spot for Cantor. I think I'd give a slight edge to Clint Capella in that price range on DraftKings, but there is a pretty big gap between them on FanDuel.
Nice. What about the other Trailblazers? Gary Trent, Covington, Jones, the starters, and then Carmelo, and anyone else off the bench?
Yeah, not too much else that I'm interested in there. I mean, they've just all been in their respective roles without Nurkic and McCollum for so long that I don't think there's a ton of value left. Like I do like Robert Covington's role right now with Harry Giles still out, getting a lot of backup center minutes and rebounding at a high rate, but he's also, pretty expensive. So last guy in, I think at 5,600 is fine for Covington if better value doesn't open up, but nothing that I'm too excited about from the other guys.
Yeah, just maybe last guys in there. On the Minnesota side, D'Angelo Russell and Beasley continue to be out. Jordan McLaughlin and Jarrett Culver are also out and doubtful for this game. So last game we saw Jalen Noel pretty much break the slate with 50 fantasy points. I mean, he's a good per minute producer, but that just seemed like a total fluke to me. And it was a blowout, so he got all those blowout minutes. So I'm thinking maybe he'll be a little bit overowned based on that big performance, but he's super cheap on FanDuel at 3,600. What are you thinking with Noel tonight?
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at too, where he's basically minimum salary. He's a good play. But what I see is that he still played about 11 minutes in the first half. And so you expect that if the game's competitive and he's not making every shot that he takes, you're probably getting 22 to 24 minutes from him. The good thing about him is that he does have a high ceiling. He's a high usage guy. He can produce at a high rate. So he certainly can play his way into more minutes. Like when you think about who's ahead of him in the rotation, you're talking about like Jake Layman. So he certainly can play his way into more minutes, but I do think there's a good chance that people sort of overestimate what his role is going to be on average based on what he did last game. And he does end up being a little bit overowned. But again, at that FanDuel price tag, it's even if you do get 22 minutes from him, he's probably going to pay it off.
All right, we got a super chat here from our old pal, Emac. He wants me to ask you about hangover situation.
Feel fine. It's a tradition that I'd kind of gotten away from, but we're back.
Nice, man. Wow, Emac's got a good eye. Man, it's when there's NBA DFS, it's hard to drink too much when we gotta get up early and grind here. But
yeah.
Props on that. Now, the big beneficiary of McLaughlin being out was Anthony Edwards. Played monster minutes. He missed some of the last minutes due to the blowout, but I'm just gonna pull up the rotation here. And you were calling that with no backup point guard, he would be getting those minutes, and he played 20 minutes in the first half. So that's pretty interesting. Although, I mean, the salary and average production isn't the best. If he gets the same minutes as last game, that could be huge. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the rotation is beneficial. Got most of the minutes that Rubio didn't play. Didn't get 100% of them, but still got a lot. And he's one of the only high usage guys here. Like Towns obviously dominates usage, but beyond that, Rubio's not a high usage guy. Jake Layman, Jared Vanderbilt, like none of these guys outside of Towns and then basically Jalen Noel are high usage players. So I think you see Anthony Edwards take on a bigger playmaking role when he's out there without Rubio, and then also just be a really high usage guy. So it's a situation where I think there's a little bit of sticker shock, but he's actually pretty reasonably priced, I think, for his current role in this team.
Definitely. I'm feeling some Edwards tonight. I mean, not like a lock play, but someone solid to mix in. And then one of the big questions was with McLaughlin out, would Rubio play more? He got maybe an extra minute from his normal rotation, but I do feel like maybe there's some potential there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still potential. I think the salary is very reasonable. 5,700. I think he was actually more expensive on DraftKings last game than he is tonight. 4,800 on FanDuel, so still very, very cheap in a good matchup. But yeah, like you said, the rotation wasn't great for him. He played 10.5 minutes in the first quarter, only played 4.5 in the second. So, if that game doesn't blow out, you're probably getting like 30, 31 minutes. I think the pricing is good on Rubio. It's another situation where if value doesn't open up, Rubio could end up being a really useful piece. If it does, then I think you're going to get off Rubio pretty quickly.
Fair enough. Yeah, not the most exciting fantasy producer, but he's 4,800 on FanDuel, so a better play on FanDuel than DraftKings. Now, Towns, I mean, he's the best fantasy player on the team. I don't remember him having any big games lately, but that potential seems there. And we kind of have this preconceived notion of Cantor not being a great defender. So what are you doing with Towns tonight?
I think it's just going to be tough to get there. Like there are so many pay up options I like on this slate. I kind of wish that it was like last night and there were a lot of value plays that we could go to. But right now, you kind of have to prioritize these guys. And I think it'll be sort of difficult to prioritize Towns because you do have a lot of very strong mid-range centers that we've talked about. And then, a lot of other guys to pay up for as well. So he's another one. Like if you get there, you're not going to be upset about Towns. You're probably getting 34, 35 minutes if this game's competitive. But at the same time, I have trouble, prioritizing allocating the money to him.
Two other guys I'm looking at are Layman and Vanderbilt, who are starting. The salaries are just low for starters on today's slate. And one other I'll throw out there is Naz Reid. The coach said he would get more minutes alongside Towns, and that was the case last game. They played a few together. That bumped Reid's minutes up about 3 to 4. So any interest on these 3 to 4K guys?
Yeah, I'll add Jaden McDaniels to that group as well. I think that it's a really unpredictable situation because a lot of it's going to be based on who's playing well, kind of where the minutes go. But these guys are all so cheap on DraftKings where we're looking for value and they're in a good matchup. There's a pretty good chance that at least one, maybe two of these guys have a very good game for their salary. So I think it's a situation where like you probably in tournaments are going to want to keep Vanderbilt away from McDaniels. You probably wouldn't really want more than one or at most two of these guys in a lineup together, but there's a pretty good chance that at least one of them ends up being one of the better values on the slate, I think.
Guys, if you haven't already gone to awesemo.com/podcast, we have all of our non-live before lock shows available in podcast format. So that includes this NBA strategy show. If sometimes you like watching or listening to podcasts instead of going to YouTube. So we also have a special promo where if you leave a review on one of our podcasts, hopefully 5 stars, mention your Twitter handle or email, and you'll be eligible to win a free week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. We're awarding one every Friday from those reviews. All right. And also we have oddshopper.awesemo.com. 80% of you guys said that finding the best odds for your bet is important to you. We have all of the U.S. books and their odds they're offering for each bet. And we're especially focusing on player props because those are some of the most profitable. The sites, they kind of limit you if you know what you're doing. So just strike when you can. And we have all the projections and our projected win percentages on those props as well. So Awesemo or oddshopper.awesemo.com. The last 2 games, Indiana at Phoenix. Now, Caris LeVert is scheduled to be back for this one. That's kind of mitigating some interest in the other Indiana guys for me, and it's a tough matchup for Phoenix versus Phoenix. Caris, it's tough to know exactly how he's going to fit in tonight, if he's going to join the starting lineup potentially in place of Doug McDermott or Justin Holiday, or if he's going to be more limited. He had that kidney surgery, so it's a little bit tough to know exactly what the minutes are going to be tonight because I wouldn't expect that to necessarily affect his conditioning. So, he's 3,900 on FanDuel. I'm thinking about just locking him in. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty much – I think there's a lot of uncertainty here, like what to expect from LeVert, what the rotations are going to look like. Does he come off the bench? Does he join the starting lineup? But the pricing sort of alleviates a lot of those concerns. 7,100 on DraftKings. I just don't anticipate LeVert having a big enough role in his first game back for that to be a spot that I really want to go to on this slate. And then 3,900 on FanDuel, I also don't anticipate him having a role so small that he doesn't pay that off. So I think he just ends up looking like a great option on FanDuel, and I feel pretty comfortable ignoring him on DraftKings.
Agreed. Now with the matchup being a little bit tougher, I'm not thinking Sabonis, Turner, or Brogdon will be core pieces tonight. And they played last night as well, so they're on the back-to-back. Any interest there?
Not really. Outside of obviously people know that they're very good, but It is a tough matchup. The pricing doesn't look great. Like 6,600 on FanDuel for Brogdon is fine, but I don't think it's like a great salary on this particular slate. LeVert being back, one thing that I want to pay attention to also, in addition to, just does he start, does he come off the bench, is who, like if he comes off the bench, who's he playing with when he's out there? Like, do they end up playing Brogdon a bunch of minutes alongside LeVert? Does LeVert play with both Brogdon and Sabonis on the bench? But the uncertainty there does mean that potentially either or both of Brogdon and Sabonis could see their rates come down depending on how many minutes they end up playing alongside LeVert.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that he's going to take these minutes that Edmund Sumner had been getting, where it is about 16 a game, maybe steals a couple from other guys. But actually, now that I'm looking at it, it looks like Sumner kind of passed Holiday in the rotation. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. There's plenty of minutes go around there. On the Phoenix side, a little bit better spot for them, but still not great. Devin Booker is probable for this one. Cameron Johnson is out. So I'm not really seeing anyone pop out a ton, but some decent plays. Any interest on the Phoenix guys?
Yeah, nothing that really stands out there either. Like 7,600 for Paul, 7,900 for Booker are both perfectly fine salaries. They both have high ceilings, but they don't stand out as like top values or anything. Same really can be said for DeAndre Ayton at 6,300. I think it's a good price point. I think I would rather try and find the money to get to like Cantor or Capella, but I think 6,300 for Ayton is fine as well.
We got an interesting narrative alert from Shane in the chat. He says Sabonis and Saric played at Gonzaga together.
I didn't know Saric went to Gonzaga.
Yeah, I honestly haven't been following the college stuff. That's interesting though. So I'm kind of looking at Paul and Bridges and Aiden like decent options, but there's nothing really motivating me to click the button. Is there anyone in particular on this team you look at?
No, not in particular. I guess it's worth noting Frank Kaminsky started last game, but he still only played 10.5 minutes. We've seen that when he starts with Crowder back, when Kaminsky starts, he's typically not playing enough minutes to be DFS relevant.
Good. Dallas and Denver is our last one. So with Dallas, we had Luka and Porzingis rest last game. So I assume they're going to be back tonight. That kind of makes it hard to get to any of the other guys because they're priced up because of this last game. And the matchup versus Denver, I mean, it's okay. It's nothing too exciting. But Luka in particular looks like a solid option. He's 10.6K on DraftKings, 10.4K on FanDuel. What are you doing with Luka?
It's just hard for me to put him ahead of Harden or Giannis. And even Jokic on the other side. I would prefer over Luka. So I think it's going to be really tough to get to him, but that will make him a good option in tournaments. Like there's just so many guys to pay up for on this slate that I think even though there's a few guys that I clearly prefer, the ownership shouldn't get too high. Like if there ends up being a big ownership gap, I think it's a really good spot to pivot in tournaments to just whoever the lower owned superstars are. And I think Luka is probably going to be one of them just because they all have such high ceilings. I don't love the matchup against Denver, but Luka is close to matchup proof. Like he does everything so well when he's on the floor. So really, really like Luka, just like him a little bit less than a few other guys.
Agreed. Yeah, it's going to be hard to pay up for a lot of these guys in the first place, and the matchup isn't that exciting. Now, the rest of the team looks even harder to get to. Porzingis at 8,300, not getting quite the minutes as the other guys in that range. But, I mean, we know what he's capable of, which is pretty good, but are you going to him tonight?
Yeah, it's just really tough because, like you said, the minutes, you start comparing him. We talked about kind of the same thing with John Morant last night. Like at this price point, you get to where even though his per minute production is really good, there's a lot of players around him that offer similar production, and most of those players average a few more minutes per game. So it just makes it relatively unlikely that he ends up being the guy you need. That being said, the ceiling is still really high. He does offer block upside, which is one of the more volatile stats, and can make guys drastically outperform their salary. But I think that he's just a little more expensive than I would like, given the minutes that he's likely to play.
Agreed. Now, with the rest of the team, we kind of know who the starters will be: Richardson, DFS, and Kleba. Now, The pricing on some of these guys is a little bit better on FanDuel, so I'm looking at these guys more on FanDuel. And Tim Hardaway Jr. is also 4,200 on FanDuel. So any love for these guys on FanDuel?
It's a decent price point. The concern that I have with Hardaway is that he could very easily play like 22 minutes now that everybody's back. He's still competing with Jalen Brunson for minutes. Josh Richardson, is typically going to play more minutes. So if better value doesn't open, like Hardaway is at least someone that does give you a high ceiling because he's capable of scoring. And if he is shooting well, he'll probably play more minutes. But I also think he's a very risky option that can disappoint even at 4,200.
I'm getting called out a lot because people are saying Saric didn't play at Gonzaga, and apparently I just trusted what I read in the YouTube chat here, so just never do that.
I was going to say, I was pretty sure that Saric came from overseas.
Yeah, I know he's from overseas. I just didn't know he didn't play at Gonzaga. It seemed potentially possible. He did play in Zagreb. That kind of has that Zag thing, so maybe that's how we got confused here. Now, on the Denver side, Jokic does it all for this team, and he's got the salary tag that he deserves at 10.8K on DraftKings and 11.7K on FanDuel. So tonight, without a ton of value, how are you handling Jokic?
I love Jokic every slate he plays. Like, he averages 1.67 fantasy points per minute. He averages 36 minutes per game. There's really nothing not to like there, and the matchup against Dallas is fine as well. The problem is just going to be that the center position does have a pretty strong mid-range, which is really important on a slate like this, because with the lack of value, at least right now, being able to go to this position to potentially get 50 fantasy points from someone at a mid-range salary is going to be really, really useful, whereas other positions don't really have as many options. So I think one thing that's going to hurt the ability to get to Jokic a little bit is just when you think about the overall ceiling of your lineup. In a lot of cases, I think going to Harden or Giannis and then going to a mid-range, Capella or Cantor or somebody is just going to give you a little bit higher ceiling than going Jokic and then going cheap at those other positions. So I love Jokic. I think it's still going to be kind of hard to get to him on this slate, at least right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a little bit tough to find the money. Now, this is a back-to-back, so I'm kind of wondering if some of the guys may rest. I'm looking at Paul Millsap in particular, but I mean, he didn't play much last night, so I don't even know if that would matter a ton. And we got JaMychal Green questionable for this one as well. He didn't play last night. Now, do you see any news we should be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Millsap and Green news is the news that you're looking for. I don't think it matters all that much. It's just, I think that because Denver's played up until yesterday, Denver played, a bunch of games in a row without Green or Millsap. So pricing is pretty much still set for those guys to be out. I don't think that there would be anything that really stands out if Millsap were to rest.
We did see Monty Morris continue to start even with Millsap back yesterday. So he's 4,700 on DraftKings, 4,200 on FanDuel. Maybe just a time fringe option at best, but yeah, man, it's Murray's price at 8,200 is kind of tough for me to get to. He just doesn't do a ton other than scoring these days. What do you make of Murray with that price?
Yeah, I mean, it's just purely a tournament option at that price, I think, because when he's shooting well, which he actually has been for an extended period lately, but he's going to shoot more. But like you said, he's pretty scoring dependent for a point guard. I mean, he's got a 20% assist percentage this year, but with Jokic playing as many minutes as he is, it cuts into Murray's average production. So it's just, Murray has a really high ceiling, but Jokic just cuts in his average rates enough to where he's overpriced on average.
Agreed. I'll probably save him for if Jokic is out somehow. And then last but not least, Michael Porter Jr. has been getting pretty good minutes, but his salary reflects that at this point. 7K on DraftKings, 6,700 on FanDuel. Any tournament interest?
Not really. Played another 33, 34 minutes last night, which is good to see. But only about a 20% usage rate playing with Murray and playing with Jokic. Rebound percentage is fine, but obviously loses out a lot to Jokic there as well. tournaments is okay, but it doesn't really stand out to me as a great play.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so we've got 7 games down here. I think, man, there's a couple of games to target, but for the most part, it seems like it's pretty wide open who we're looking at tonight. What are your overall thoughts on tonight's slate?
Yeah, I think right now, at least, it looks like a really fun slate, like kind of the exact opposite of yesterday, where yesterday it felt like there were just so many guys that you were just blindly plugging in and there was going to be a lot of overlap and it was going to be tough to find like similar it was going to be tough to find plays with a similar range of outcomes that weren't really popular. Whereas tonight, there's a lot of guys that just kind of look the same. And so I think slates like that are really fun because like in cash, you actually get to make decisions and you can kind of be different even in cash. And in tournaments, it becomes really fun because you can make like the ranges of outcomes make it so that ownership becomes more important and you can, make pivots and make good plays that way. So I think at least right now, it looks like a pretty wide open slate.
Yeah, I like that. I think when you have not as many guys that are lock button plays, it allows you to get a little bit different with your lineup construction. Where like last night, it's like if you lock in Porter Jr. and another Rocket, it's like you got so much salary, it funnels you into the top end. Tonight, it's a lot more open for you to be creative. So should be a good one. Guys, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, got a lot of great content today. So we got our NASCAR strategy show at 12 p.m. Eastern with Phil and Jason. NHL we got at 3 p.m. with Cliffy and Josh. And then we also at 3 p.m. have our members game plan stream with Terry covering NBA DFS concepts. And then finally, we got the deeper dive and live before lock this evening to take you all the way up to NBA lock. Also, shout out to our sponsor, No House Advantage. Check out nohouseadvantage.com for DFS style tournaments with player props. And guys, thanks for supporting the site and good luck tonight.